Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to Awake, Aware, Alive. I am here with my good friend, Marlo Nikkila. Marlo and I met, I actually don't even really remember the circumstances of how we met, but how we really bonded was we each have our own story of how we healed ourselves from cancer naturally. And Marlo is, she is just such a bright light. She is very awake, aware, and alive. And I am so excited for her to come and share her journey here today. Today, our topic is free to be me. So, Marlo, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. It's really fun to be here with you again.
I love it. Since I met you, you have been on so many adventures. You have you have moved your whole home to a completely different country from when I first
Yes.
met you. You were in the Pacific Northwest and
hmm
you were talking about doing a healing center there and you were doing some really amazing things. And then all of a sudden you thought, you know what? Our hearts are being called to Costa Rica. So
Yes.
you're free to be you. This is so
Um,
exciting.
yeah, it's been quite the adventure and the experiment. And, we loved our life in Hood River. And I loved doing retreats, but it just felt like it was time to go. Like we were being called into something bigger and different. So we looked at different places in the States, and then Costa Rica just kept showing up for us. So we're like, all right, let's go. We don't really know what's happening here. Um, so we're just letting ourselves be guided. And I will say that in relation to the title of our talk today, like that's really what's happening. I knew I was being called into something um like mastering all the things I was teaching, but in a different way, like just living my life. And Costa Rica has stripped me clean and it continues to do so. I mean, it started with selling our home and selling like 95% of our stuff, coming here with two suitcases, not knowing what we were doing other than a Spanish school for 3 months. And we're just kind of letting everything I'm letting things just fall away and shed, including identities, like so many identities of who we think we are.
Yes.
So that's been the freedom that I've been playing with. And it's been really hard, but it's also been freeing at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Growing up, I always just like, I didn't feel right. Like I just felt really uncomfortable in the world. And I just kept thinking, like, this is not me. Like, the me I'm designed to be is like healthy and happy and feeling alive and free. And like, I'm not feeling that. And
Mm,
then it was only, and I didn't know why. Like, I couldn't pinpoint what was wrong with me. Right.
mm,
And then it was only later on that I started to realize that there are so many false identities that get projected onto us. You're the
yeah.
student, you're the daughter, you're the teacher, you're the worker, you're the, all of these identities that really are not who we are. So I love that you're talking about that. Can you say more about
hmm
that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it takes a while for us to like think we're stepping into more of who we are, as far as like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, oh, I'm a business owner, oh, I'm a healer, oh, I'm a teacher, like all these things. And it's like, oh, I'm willing to be seen as that, and I'm willing to like show up and share my gifts in that way. And then for me, it's like, now who am I without those things? Who am I if I'm not healing? Who am I if I'm not serving? Who am I if I'm not American, or in the States, like it kind of is this layer. And I it took a lot. It's like, because I would teach, like it's who we are being that's the most important. But when you're in these roles, you don't really, there's like a layer of illusion that's still playing. And so I had to get to a place where it's like, oh, I'm actually not even serving anybody. So who am I without feeling like I'm contributing? Like I kind of went to this really, well, into a cocoon and just kind of got more clear about, um, yeah, the essence of me. And that's really who I am. And the first awakening to that was through my breast cancer experience, where within a few minutes of diagnosis, like what I heard was, you are a divine being, nothing can hurt you. And so it's like returning back to that in some sense, because all these other layers were, these roles and these identities were like serving me on some level. But I knew I needed to come back to my pure essence, is what it feels like. And it's still happening. So there's still some layers and still beliefs and different things that I'm being with to dismantle or dissolve. Most recently, I mean, I guess within the last 6 months, I was, to just like ground this into an actual example, is I had been vegan for 18 years. And then 6 months ago, I started eating meat again, which I never thought I would do. Like there's all these values and all this programming, and it's not saying that I have no judgment around it, because I actually really still enjoy a lot of vegan food. But it's like I'm not labeled that way. I don't label myself that way. So there's just more freedom to travel. There's more freedom to like eat. There's more freedom just within myself of not calling myself that. And so I just saw all the places that I've kind of put myself in a box, which had served me in some at one point. But now that my mission is to be free, I'm leaning into everything that I'm noticing kind of puts limits um, or it puts me in a box of where I can't move out of that. I'm just kind of wanting to dismantle all of that.
Absolutely. I've known for a long time that this lifetime for me is about unlimiting myself, being
Mm-hmm.
truly unlimited. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I really love what you said about, what you heard as soon as you received that diagnosis, that you are a grant, what your words were, but my words are
Divine
grant,
being. Yeah.
yeah, grand being of light is what I say. You are
Mm-hmm.
a divine being, nothing can hurt you. And it took me a
Mm-hmm.
while to discover that, but that was the path of my healing too. You started to realize that you needed to get back to your true core essence, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I realized too in my journey. It was like, as soon as I realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm facing cancer, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a second, that is not going to be my reality. And
Mm-hmm.
all of the who I am not, all of the stuff that was making me miserable was the stuff that I knew was making my body miserable. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the, chemo was certainly not going to make me any less miserable. And
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
I knew that that was not my path. And I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
participate in that at all. So my route was getting back to the core of who I am. And along that
Mm-hmm.
journey, it's like the awarenesses just started coming in, like, oh my gosh, none of this is real. None of this is what we're being told it is. And I
Yeah.
have far more power over my own state of being than any pill, than any other person on the planet. Nobody can dictate my state of being other than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of courage to actually be with the thing you don't really want to be with. Because I feel like our presence and our beingness is the medicine, and it is the piece that will free us to live here in a way that is in alignment with ourselves. Like it's not going to be the same as someone else, And so just giving ourselves and others permission. But I think what is happening is that we over-identify ourselves. We like put all these layers of identity on who we are, and then we try to play those roles. And so I feel like even in the healing world, and even in the spiritual world, and even in the self-help world, like you can get lost in all of that. And so that was part of what I also removed myself from, is like here listening to a lot of things, reading a lot of things. I just really wanted to hear myself. And then when I started feeling better and feeling lighter and freer, then I started listening to it all again. And I'm in the space now to like, okay, I'm done listening to other people's stuff. I just want to like, again, listen to myself. So it's like this evolution of like, leaning in, coming back out, at least for me, I, this is an experiment for myself, but it seems to be working. And I just notice all the ways where I'm not, like, life has a way of showing us where we're not free. Like when we're building a home, well, we ended up buying, after deciding not to be part of an eco village here, we decided to buy our own piece of land because it had these beautiful waterfalls on it. And so we're in the process of building a home and right now it's a small retreat center that can be turned into like short-term, longer-term stays. I'm not entirely sure what that looks like yet, but one of the things I keep feeling is I'm just holding it lightly. I'm holding it lightly. I don't know what's happening. Even though I do know what's happening, I'm just being guided. In the moment that it's no longer a yes for us, we'll let go. But I'm shown all the time where I'm holding on, because I can feel it in my body. I can feel the anxiety. I can feel the resistance. I can feel the anger. I can feel the scarcity. I can feel all those things. And so then I'm using those experiences to free myself, because I lean in. I let myself be with that discomfort. And just like, well, what wants to happen? And then even though it feels scary and it feels hard and I'm kicking and screaming, a version of me is kicking and screaming. It's like, no, this is what wants to happen. And I just lean in. So life is my teacher. And it's showing me all the places where I am still in resistance. And I now have the commitment to lean into the resistance, be with all the stuff and realize what's there. But sometimes I don't even need to understand. Just being with it actually helps it dissolve. So it's been quite the journey.
Wow. And so much of that resistance, what I've come to discover is that that resistance is the programming that we've received that says things
Mhm.
are this way and you have to deal with how things are and you have to do things this way because that's the way it is.
Mm.
That's not the way it is. I
Mhm.
love that you said, life is my teacher. And my experience when I was a very little girl before school age was like, I don't want to go to school because I knew that that's where the programming started.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be out in nature. I wanted nature to be my
Amazing.
teacher. I wanted the universe to be my teacher.
Mhm.
But I had a mother who was a teacher, so I had to go to school and, be
Mhm.
taught. And it was very uncomfortable and it didn't turn out nearly as joyful and beautiful as everybody else told me it was going to be.
Mhm. Wow, it's amazing that you had that awareness at so young.
Yeah, it made things a little uncomfortable for me, let's
For
say.
sure. Yeah, I can see that.
It's not
Yeah.
been an easy life. And
Mhm.
now it's trying to undo all of that programming that I received
Mhm.
so that the universe once again can be my teacher.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I needed a break from, there's this beautiful bird that just flew by.
I love that because we can see it in the window behind
Okay.
you, right?
Gosh, that's awesome. Um, I lost track of what I was going to say.
About the universe being your teacher.
Oh, yeah, I actually needed to take a break from healing. The healing work,
Yes.
and just let myself be and just live my life. And it took a lot. And I do recognize I'm in a beautiful space where I'm not needing to generate income, because I think that it would be a different potential story or a different experiment
Mm.
where I do feel like I'm creating this space for me to be able to be in business in a different way. Like I do feel like there's a different model coming and I don't know exactly what that is, but I needed space to unhook from all the programming that comes with what it means to have a business and how you market and all that kind of stuff. So um yeah, I just needed a break from it all. And I'm really grateful that I'm in a country like if I was in the US, I would probably still be able to do this, but it feels like we were called here. And I feel like part of the reason was for me to have a break where I even have trouble speaking the language. So I'm not really immersed with a lot of activity with people. So I'm really spending a lot of time with myself, which has been something I've wanted for a very long time and just never felt like I could for lots of different reasons. But it took me going to another country to have that, where people feel lonely um, here. And I just feel just so happy to be by myself.
Yes, I can totally relate to that. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I am living with my partner, but and my husband, but that's different. We've learned how to cohabitate together. Yeah, so we
Beautiful.
still have our own space.
You know, and you have this beautiful land. We can see the mountaintop behind you or in front of
Well,
you.
so I'm yeah, we're renting right now. So and that's another thing, this project, we thought we'd be in our house by now. The road's not even done.
Oh,
So it's definitely a slower life here. I'm calling it my sloth life. Um, and it's not a 5-year project that we were kind of thinking it would be. It's probably going to be more like a 10, 15 plus year project of getting it's reforesting a cow pasture. So we're going to put fruit trees and just bring back the jungle and the wildlife, as well as having these waterfalls. So part of my hope is I really want to create space for people to be in this space of beingness. So then each person can have their own waterfall to just go and be held and nourished and restored in their own waterfall, to go swimming in it. And just, I don't know, there's something about, I think having more time to ourselves is really important. Um, so that's my vision. And it's going to be, I'm having to let go of timeline and I'm having to let go of all the places I'm gripping and resisting. So those are some examples of what's happening.
wow. I love this. I love that you are in a position where you can steward this land
Mm,
because in my awareness, like part of the healing process is not only healing our bodies, it's about healing the land as
mhm,
well. Our bodies are part of the land. We can't heal our bodies without also healing Mother Earth. Like it
mhm.
all goes together.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, like, I came across this definition of healing that really resonates with me, because I think a lot of times people, or at least how I have felt it, it's more of a fixing, or I need to do something or add something, and it's this person, I think it was in the presence process. I'll have to look at where I heard this, but it's healing is about integration. And so I feel like for us with the land, it's restoring it back to what it was naturally. Like I'm not doing anything other than helping it become what it already was. And so like there's the integration piece, and that's partly what I feel like the healing that I'm doing now is just integrating all of me, including the things that I have feared, including the things that I've resisted, and leaning into those so that they're not now forming my decisions. They're not now dictating my actions, because otherwise they're in control. And I want to just be free of that, so then I can actually hear the guidance that I'm here to receive, and just step into that. So I'm even letting go of my own control, which has been a big one. And that's still something I continue to bump up against from time to time.
Sure. I mean, we live in this whole control structure society. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
about control or being controlled or controlling.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've never known anything other than that because it's the whole planet that is under this false construct of
Yeah.
control or be controlled. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a huge thing that we have to realize that there's something beyond all of that. And that when we are connected to universal, to source, to Mother, Father, God, whatever words we want to put on that, we don't need to control anything. The universe has an incredibly beautiful way of fulfilling our desires, of giving us things that can be far better than what our limited thinking can even conceive of. So when we
Yeah.
let go of the control, then we make room for the divine to come in and give
Mm-hmm.
us what we actually are entitled, not entitled to isn't really the word I want to use, but what's actually possible for us as
Yeah.
divine beings.
Yeah. 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 It's I feel like I'm in a, what's the word? I mean, I guess a master's level like
Yes.
experience, like it's been interesting. I mean, some of the things I'll just throw this out to some of the other things that um I've been navigating that you almost I won't say this. I'm kind of monitoring what I'm saying because I feel like I don't want to project any like beliefs or stuff. But for me, moving to another country has allowed some really different experiences that I don't know that I would have had in a state. So it's calling up different ways of really being with stuff. So we've been blackmailed and we're currently in the process of being sued, even though it's not official yet because they don't know where we live, so they can't serve us papers. But it's just this really interesting thing of like doing that in another country where it's a little more vulnerable because you don't speak the language and stuff. So you can imagine for me, like all the stuff's coming to the surface, and it's like, oh, all right, well, let's see how this plays out. And that's kind of how I went through cancer too, where it's like, oh, all right, well, this is just another experience. And when I have been able to just say, this is just an experience and I can trust in life, then I'm able to navigate it differently from a place of like, oh, okay, let's see what happens. I'll do my part, but I don't need to make it be something I think it should be, where it's like, all right, let's see how this plays out. And we'll go from there. Like I trust myself enough to be in that space with it. And I'm just fortunate that I have a partner who's willing to play this game with me in this way.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, we've all been taught to, fear the legal system and the opponent and, all of these things, but we've never been taught that, if somebody is creating a trespass against us, a blackmail or, anything else, it's like we're not the ones that are in the wrong. It, but we've not been able to like stand up and create our own boundaries and hold the
Mm-hmm.
other person responsible for their actions. So
Well, and for me, it's like I don't, so the word sovereignty is big for me too. And I know we've talked about that. And to me, it's like, well, if I am just so solid in my own sovereignty, I actually don't need to hold anybody accountable for anything. Like it can just bounce off me, or I'm just going to navigate life in the world with whatever shows up because it's going to free me. So it's not even seeing something as a good or a bad experience. It's
right.
like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to notice what shows up, be with that, and free myself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my commitment right now. And that's what I think this project is doing. Whether we actually end up having a house or we end up having a retreat center, I don't know. But it's the journey of me freeing myself along the way. This is my spiritual practice. And it again doesn't always feel good, but I've done it enough that I have trust and faith in it that I know what's available on the other side, but I'm not doing it for that either. Like it's this weird thing. It's like being with something, not so it goes away, but being with it just so that I'm free.
And that really is the ultimate path to self-healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearing all of these spaces where we've been imprisoned, where we've not been free. And
Yeah.
our bodies reflect that space where we're not free, where we're not
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. And, we're told that the body is the problem, but the body
Right.
is the reflection of the problem. It's never the
Yeah.
problem.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you're on the beautiful journey of self-healing, which, we're
Mm-hmm.
all on this journey now to
Mm-hmm.
recognize that we've been imprisoned by all of these false matrix thought patterns of who we're
Yeah.
supposed to be and how we're supposed to live and the rules we're supposed to follow. And when we start to
Yeah.
realize, yeah, that's not actually true for a divine being of light.
Yeah. Yeah. I have another example, and I think this is when I reached out to you, said, okay, I think I'm ready to talk about this because I had more clarity around what I was navigating. But years ago, I was moving through some understanding about codependency within myself, like the people pleaser, the needing to be needed. I need to manage the experience so that I feel better. I need people to people please me. Like there's just multiple layers of this, and I'm still learning about how that shows up for me. But one of the big ones was going to see Dwayne's family. And they're lovely people, but for whatever reason, I just had a lot of resistance going. And I would go with him because he when my parents live somewhat close, but he wanted to go see them. I said, great, go see them. And he didn't want to go without me. And so that was part of my first break free of codependency. It's like, I don't want to go. If you want to see your family, go see your family. And so that broke me free. It's like, oh, I'm not needing to people please him and make sure that he gets to go see his family, or I need to spend 2 weeks of my time to travel and go there because I haven't really enjoyed my time there for different reasons. But so that was one freedom. Like, no, I'm not going. And then that resulted in a couple of years of me not going and feeling resistance and bumping up against that. Like it was still controlling me or managing me. And so most recently, it was actually after I started eating meat, where I felt more in my body and more sovereign and grounded, and just like all my energy was kind of came back to myself, where it was kind of scattered and like out here. Um, and so a few like a week after eating meat, I felt like, you know what? I have the capacity to go see his family because I no longer want that to be a conversation piece or me resisting it on any level. And so this last August, I did what's called my freedom tour. I just leaned into every single thing that I was avoiding and resisting and just went for it. And I came back just lighter and freer and more happy. It's like, oh, those things aren't playing in the background anymore. Even if we weren't talking about going, it was still playing in the background of something that I was resisting, or I was standing my ground, or I was, it's like, oh, now I can go and it doesn't affect me. So I just wanted to share that because I remember that being the impetus of me like, okay, Lisa, I think I'm ready because I was free. I
Wow.
felt free. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's really phenomenal. I love that.
And that what I would love about that story is that there is a moment where me not going was what freed me. And then there's the me going that freed me. So I guess I wanted to share that because it's not just a one way or a one thing that's always true. It's like whatever in that moment, is the thing. So I just love that particular story for myself to remind myself of that.
Wow. So when you decided to become vegan to begin with, what was your reasoning for becoming vegan?
So I had been exposed to a few friends who were vegetarian vegan when we lived in Oklahoma. So then I decided to be more vegetarian vegetarian more for like weight loss and that kind of thing, but it didn't help. And then we moved to Alaska, and I met some friends who were vegan. So we went to this thing, and it ended up being health related, environmental, human rights, animal rights. Like it was all of the reasons. And it's almost like I needed all of those things to help me commit to it. And so I remember even at the point where saying I cared so much about the animals that even if it affects my health, I will not eat meat. And so, and I remember that 18 years ago, committing to these things outside of myself, even if it impacted my health. And then now being postmenopause and stuff, I started opening up to like, oh, my body was craving eggs. I started doing some bone broth. And then I was here, like my gut, I was having gut issues, digestion stuff, and talking to a friend who does the GAPS program. And I said, well, can I heal my gut, bringing in the bone broth and the egg? She said, actually, you really need more animal protein to rebuild your system, and plants are there to detox it. And then I heard how important it is for protein content for women in particular, postmenopause, well, especially postmenopause, like 100 grams of protein. So I've just kind of been sitting with all of this, and I'm like, oh, well, I could have a chicken breast, or I can have 6 cups of quinoa. And by this time I was already shedding identity. So I was letting go of like what it means to be vegan, because I was pretty hardcore. Like we bought cars without leather. We bought clothes without leather. Like we went pretty, we were never, what's the word? We never told anybody they needed to do it, but we held ourselves to a standard. So it was just dismantling all this programming. And again, it's not saying that that's not an okay lifestyle. It's just I realized that my health was being impacted by it. And so that's the whole story of like what started unfolding. And I think had I not been open to removing identities of who I think I am or what I need to hold myself to, that may not have happened. And I think living in Costa Rica, it's a little easier on some levels. And because being vegan is also stressful, so if you add a layer of stress to our lives. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot in that, but it was mainly for really great reasons. And now I'm realizing I'm changing my mind and like flipping everything upside down for other great reasons. And so knowing that not everything is there's a time and a place for everything, and I'm just letting myself be free from all of that.
Wow. And how did you reconcile the animal part, like the harming of the animals part? Because I know like there are a lot of people that,
Mm-hmm.
that would like to dive deeper into that.
Yeah. This might sound really weird, but I haven't needed to reconcile that. Like it was such a gradual thing of me shedding layers, introducing eggs, doing some bone broth as medicine, that it doesn't even, and again, being in Costa Rica, like we get our stuff from organic farms. So there's still some intention and mindfulness around that, but the animals roam free here. So it's not like the farming and what happens in the States. That's why I think maybe it was easier for me to do that here, because it's a very different life that the animals have here versus in the States. But I don't know, it's like once I knew that's what my body needed, I just kind of like I was neutral around it.
Wow, I love that.
So yeah, I mean, as I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, wow, I sound kind of crazy, or like how could I flip so much on such a strong value system that I held for so long? But when it's the right time and it wasn't forced, and I didn't, it just I just kept listening. I just kept listening and honoring and trusting and shedding, like it just kind of happened. And then it just, it feels like it was an overnight thing, but it wasn't. It was just this process that allowed it to be the right time and the right thing for me.
I love that because it's so simple.
It is. It
Right?
is so simple.
So simple, so natural. And
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that this is the way our lives are meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
without all of the rules, without all of the regulations, without all of the have tos and shoulds and can'ts and
Yeah.
all of that, and to be able to listen to our own inner guidance. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're each created to be completely unique. Like we're not
Yeah.
supposed to fit in to this crazy world. We're all
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be individual and completely unique because we were created that way. So every
Yeah.
one of us has different needs at different times. And when we learn to tune in and follow that, we start living our best lives.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting too, because one of the other things I've been playing with is just noticing my judgments of the right or wrong, or where I'm judging other people, or, when you're in another country and they don't do everything the way you're used to it, there's this tendency to say, oh, they're doing it wrong. Well, it's like, actually, they're doing it the way they're doing it, And what if it's actually more efficient or better, or I mean, it doesn't even have to be in that realm. And so I was at a yoga retreat in Alaska a few months ago. And what I got clear about is that underneath my judgment is arrogance, that I even know. I know what's better for someone else. I know what's better, or I know the answer. And so I've been playing with just noticing where my arrogance will show up, and being with that. And I see it with other people. I see it's just everywhere. And it's like, oh, I want to get to know arrogance, so then I can actually integrate it into me. And it's not this thing that gets to just play on its own, and then my decisions and my thought process and everything. So that's just another example of like when I'm allowing myself time and space to build a relationship with it, so it gets integrated into myself.
Yeah, so that it doesn't
Yeah,
become you. It's just,
right.
yeah, right. All of
Or
these,
I'm blind to it and it's playing out there. It's
right.
like,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. It doesn't mean that it might not show up again, but it'll be like, oh, there you are. There's the arrogance.
right.
Yeah. And it's actually not who I am. It's just these energies that are playing out. Right. So again, free to be me. It's like we say, I am happy, I am whatever. And it's like, actually, those are just things we're experiencing. It's not necessarily who I am. So
So would you say that you're like, on the theme of our podcast, Awake, Aware, Alive, is this something that you are working at becoming more aware of? What does awareness mean to you?
I mean, I think just kind of what I'm just the noticing and being the neutral witness, and allowing myself to spend time with it, like just be with it. Um, yeah. And it's interesting, like the alive piece, I feel like I'm still, it's almost like I've spent the last 2 years doing the awake and aware, like if we're looking at your words, the cocoon of just kind of being in it. Because some of the spiritual teachings like, oh, once you're with something, then you feel bliss. And it's like, well, I'm not feeling bliss, so where's that coming from? And it would make me doubt like this whole thing that works. And so then I had to be with that, right?
Right?
So um I'm noticing that I've spent a lot of time in the being with the things I don't want to be with. And so I'm still willing to do that. But now it's like, oh, well, where can I actually be with bliss? Where can I actually be with lightness? Where can I actually be with the things that feel alive? Um, and so I'm kind of feeling like, because the last couple years have been so dense with those other pieces, that the aliveness, I'm starting to feel the lightness and the freedom that is available. on the other side of that.
So beautiful. And do you feel that the land is helping you to do all of this as well? Your relationship with the land?
Well, I think yes, in the sense that when I sit with like, where have I felt the most blissed out, the most alive? It's swimming in the waterfall. And so, even though it's been the rainy season here, so I haven't ventured down to the waterfalls, there's a lot of water going through, and it's a muddy mess. I don't really enjoy going to the property right now, to be honest with you. And actually, we can't because the public road has landslides and like we can't even get down there. So I haven't been on the property for a while. But the experiences that I've had in the waterfalls and swimming in the refreshing water and just being immersed in nature in that way, that is where I have felt the most alive. So yes, it has helped me with that. And that's what I tune into when I maybe don't feel alive sitting on my couch watching a Netflix TV show, but I can access that waterfall even when I'm not physically there. And so it's probably one of my top 3 alive experiences I've ever had. And that's what I want to give people the opportunity to have their own waterfall to go swim in. They can go naked and not care and just know that they can spend as much time in that space. So in the sacred pools, I'm it feels like they're the healing waters that come through the property. Yeah.
That's amazing. Do you feel like the property called you to be its steward?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, it's interesting because we had a place already purchased in the eco village, and then that stopped feeling like the right thing for us. And then our builder introduced, he's like, okay, well, I have another piece of land to show you. And so he showed us this lot. And it's so funny because maybe a year ago when we were visiting our land on the prop or in the eco village, we were staying up in this community where it's a lot cooler. And Dwayne's like, oh man, I wish we could our place in the eco village was up here because it's just so much cooler. It's not as hot and humid and stuff. And so when we're heading to our land to look at it, oh, and Dwayne said, but the only thing is I wouldn't want to live on this road. The road is horrible. So fast forward a year later, that's the road we're on. And we passed the little I can't remember what it's called, a glamping tent that we stayed in. And we're glad that we're not up that high, we're down a little bit lower. So it gets like underneath the clouds and we still have cooler weather. Like it's really the perfect elevation for us. So in that way, yes, I feel like whether the land called us or we've been guided there. And I feel like the more time I have on the land, I'll connect with it even more. Like, but right now it's been under its own transformation because we've been creating a road through it to get to our house up on top of the hill. And so it's been pretty traumatic. And so every time I kind of check in with the land, like, well, what do you want to be named? And what do you want to be? And they're like, give us time. Let us like move through this first and then we'll chat. So that's the message that I'm getting, that it needs to like settle into its new, it used to be a pig farm. So we've removed all the pig farm stuff. And so it's in its own transformation of like what the next purpose of it is. But when I did talk to it, said, do you want us to steward, be stewards for the land? And do you want to be a part of a healing for other people? And it was an immediate yes. So we'll see, holding it lightly, holding it lightly.
Wow, I can't wait to come and visit.
Yeah. No, I feel like part of the aliveness that I get, and which is why I maybe haven't been feeling it as much here, is that my home like when I did retreats in our home in Hood River and our land in Hood River, I felt alive because I loved sharing it. And I haven't felt like I have anything really to share in Costa Rica yet because of the rental homes that we've been in. They're not my ideal spaces or my ideal setups or locations and things like that. So what really jazzes me is the idea of being able to have this land where I can invite people to come, and like that's where I feel the most alive. And I'm just thinking out loud now that that's probably another reason why I haven't really felt as much of that here as I thought I would. So, because home is really important to me, and being able to share that is amazing.
Yeah, I think so many of us as healers have that same dream, that same vision of creating these healing centers, these sanctuaries where people can come and reconnect to
Mm-hmm.
the land and
Mm-hmm.
reconnect to their own divine nature so
Mm-hmm.
they can detox from
Yeah.
the false matrix, from the external world, from all of
Yeah.
those the rules and regulations and have tos and shoulds and
Mm-hmm.
all of the constant messages, where we
Mm-hmm.
can just sit quietly and just start to be with ourselves in that stillness, in that quiet, where we
Mm-hmm.
can receive a higher quality message coming
Yeah.
from source, coming from the divine, rather than
Yeah.
coming from the false matrix and the control
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I'm imagining is just coming back into that wholeness and the sovereignty so that when we do engage with the matrix, we use it to our benefit instead of the other way around. Again, looking at like, oh, okay, I'm getting triggered here, or I'm getting activated here, or oh, I'm afraid here. Then that is where the work is to be done to free ourselves from that. So, because I feel like it's like the part that I'm really wanting to play with is how can I mean, I think that I'm going to butcher this, but be in the world, but not of the world, like can we still live here on planet Earth? I mean, we're here for a reason. I don't know what that is, but we're here for a reason. And how can we manage or navigate our life in that sovereign way and just not be taken or, like just have that awareness of what's there instead of being overtaken by it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I think we're all in a really beautiful experiment. and and I'm really curious of how things will play out. And I just keep trying to come back to a space of neutrality.
Yeah.
So
We see that this world that we've been living in this Kali Yuga, the state of darkness for a really long time, the age of darkness, and
mm,
now we're in the shift. This is where the light comes in and takes over, and where we start to have people leading the world who actually wish to have peace and prosperity and have everybody be awake, aware, and alive, rather than
yeah.
in that false matrix control structure where it's the ego that, that arrogance
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
were modeled day in and day out by the world
Mm-hmm.
leaders. And this is not
Yeah.
leading. This is, like it's time for us as the healers to come in and shine our lights and start to actually be leaders that heal and help and empower. And so it's such an
Yeah.
exciting time to be alive.
It is because I'm really curious about what can be created from that place, where we are whole and sovereign and free and what becomes available there.
Exactly.
I'm really excited about that. Whether that happens in my lifetime or not, I don't know, but I just feel like that's the potential, the possibility that we're playing in.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who are starting to realize that there is a sovereign way of being on this planet. And it is about, you know, extricating ourselves from that control structure, from
Mhm.
stepping out beyond the rules that have been set up that really are for our enslavement, you know, to keep us under the control structure. And
Mhm.
when we step outside and stand in our own power, we can say no to those things. Like we don't have to keep participating. And when we step out into nature, we can see that we see the rules of nature. It's like live in
Yeah.
peace and harmony, you know, always regenerating, rejuvenating. And this
Mhm.
is what's actually natural and normal. We start to
Mhm.
remember that, oh, wait a second. I don't have to
Mhm.
follow rules that make no sense. Wait a sec.
Right. Yeah. Do you have an example of like you saying no to a rule or something in your own life that you feel like you are ready to share?
Well, a couple of, you know, one of the big things was you were talking earlier about, you know, having a business and, you know, how do we do business in the new world? And for such a long time, I was so resistant to having a business. Yeah, I just did not want to have a business. I wanted to work for myself. I didn't want to work for anybody else. I didn't want to be an employee. And I knew that I had a lot of things to share, but I was
Mhm.
super resistant to having a business. And I never could understand why that was. And then it was only a few years ago that I had the light bulb moment and I started to recognize, oh, it's because I am a woman who can operate in the private. I don't need to have a business to be successful. I can operate just as myself.
Mhm.
And the rules are different when we do that.
Mhm.
And we don't have to follow all the preconceived rules of, you know, paying fealty to the system and
Mhm.
doing all of
Mhm.
these things that we're told that we have to do, that we have to, you know, register things and, you know, all of that. Like that's just part of the control structure. When we
Mhm.
start to realize that, oh, I can live as a sovereign being. There are two gentlemen that teach a course called The Sovereign's Way, and
Mhm.
I started to learn from them, and I was like, oh, this is completely different. That and this is why I said earlier about, you know, holding other people accountable for their actions, meaning,
Mhm.
you know, if somebody comes at you and you know, tries to extort money or, you know, make a
Mhm.
trespass of any kind, it's like we're so used to going like, oh my gosh, now I have to get somebody to defend me and do like, no, we can just stand up and say, no, you're creating a trespass and hold them accountable, you know,
Mhm.
energetically, even even if it's only energetically, and we start to
Mhm.
recognize, wait a second, this is not appropriate behavior. I don't need to
Right.
be on the receiving end of inappropriate behavior.
Mhm.
I can step
Mhm.
myself up and I can
Mhm.
say no, this is
Yeah.
not appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not going to play your game.
Exactly. Right?
Mhm.
Because that's how this whole thing has been going on for so long. The people that, you know, say you have to do this because I say so. Oh, okay. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'll just follow the
Yeah.
rules. But we're just empowering, we're adding our energy to the inappropriate behavior. And
Right. Right.
so we're here to
Yeah.
dismantle that.
Yeah, that's great. Because it reminds me too of how I've been wanting to like again free myself and then trying to learn Spanish. It's almost like I've been put in a different programming of that the cultural programming of how language is used and things. And so it was interesting how I was wanting to kind of remove myself from language, and then I inserted myself into language, and even just the programming that happens when you learn the understanding of what they mean by certain phrases. It's just, it was interesting for me. And then also we did get our temporary residency here, which means that we don't have to leave. Before it was every 90 days, and now it's every 180 days. But we don't have to leave. So, but it's different, like knowing what I realized, that I know that I'm playing a game. I'm inserting myself into the matrix. And there's a difference from like, oh, I'm doing it on purpose versus I'm just acquiescing, or I'm not doing it with an awareness. It's like, oh, we are choosing, because now we're in the system. So now we pay into the insurance and all that stuff, but we chose to do that. We didn't have to, but we chose to do that. And it's more empowering when you can play in and out of what rules you want to participate in and what you don't.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
the system can work for us.
Yeah.
It's when we're mindlessly working for the system that it doesn't work for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 It's very interesting. We covered a lot.
I know, right? I love our
I hope it's of
conversation.
service to somebody, but if anything, I enjoyed just talking to you. I'm sure it will be on some level.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yes. Oh, it's
Mm.
always such a joy connecting with you, Marlo. Oh my goodness.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I feel the same. And I learned so much. And you have such a strong um, conviction and knowingness that whoever, gets to be in your space will feel that. And I look forward to everybody who gets to be in your presence.
Oh, thank you so much.
Mm.
And I love following your journeys. I love how open you are about all of this because, we all need to be more open about our journeys because it's when we're afraid to
Mhm.
share things that we hold things in and it just festers in there. And,
Mhm.
and the more we share, the more we realize that our stories are so much more similar than they are different. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that, because there have been times it's like, oh, I don't want anybody to know that we've been, blackmailed here, or that it's taking longer, or we don't, like there's all these things, because there's always, I don't want my story to necessarily be projected onto someone else. And I don't want Costa Rica to have this sense of like, oh my God, you can't come to Costa Rica. You're going to get blackmailed and you're getting sued and it's going to take forever. And those might be true, but if you're up for the experience, you'll move through it. But it is, I had to let go of what that means about me, that this is happening, or even that the first 6 months we did not like it here. We did not want to be here. So we left and went back to the States for a month and a half. And I felt like I had failed, and it's like, no, I need to just let go of even what I think other people are going to say, or what I'm making it mean, or what other people will make it mean. It's like, no, we had an experience. Whether we leave in 6 months or not, we got what we needed and we're on to something else. But a lot of people will think like, oh, if you're not here full time, if you move here and you don't stay, that you failed somehow. It's like, no, you got what you needed, or it didn't work out the way you wanted it, and you move on. So it's that judgment piece, right, that I was putting on myself. And so in sharing my story, I just feel like this is just an experience, and it's kind of funny, and like we're moving through it okay.
absolutely. And it just
Yeah.
feels like by sharing the story, like everything just kind of starts to open up and fall away, and all of those
Mm-hmm.
charges of like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't, that just kind of
Mm-hmm.
all opens up. And like you say, it's just an experience, it's just a grand adventure. And if we're all up for the adventure, it becomes a much more light and fun adventure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's going back to the breast cancer experience. Once I realized that it was going to be an adventure, I actually told people, because I didn't feel strong enough in myself in that moment, but I told people to not project their worries and their fears and all that onto me, and to just see me as healthy and whole and complete. And it was a really important message where I'm realizing, just as I was sharing about being blackmailed and all that, it's like there is a time where I can feel like I can't handle how other people are going to necessarily perceive something. So I do hold it a little closer. But then when I'm stronger in myself, then I don't care. And it's almost like that codependency piece, which is something I've been learning, is that I have this over responsibility of how someone else is going to hear something or what they're going to receive or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's actually not my job. And that's not up to me. And so it's almost giving back other people their power, even though I wasn't, intentionally trying to take it. But it's like, oh, I'm sovereign, you're sovereign, deal with whatever you're dealing with, and I'll deal with whatever I'm dealing with, and we can come together and love each other.
Yes. Oh, thank
So
you. My
yeah.
goodness. Yeah. In my journey, I wasn't that strong, and I didn't share it with anybody. But it turned
Mm,
out that was my perfect path, because it was all
mhm.
about me going within to find my
Right.
own answers, not listening to
Yeah.
anybody else, not having
Yeah.
followed anybody else's rules. It was about
Yeah.
me reconnecting. And then it
Yeah.
was like, oh, hey, Lisa, your body is just following your lead, You're
Mm,
you've been a mess, so your
mm.
body is just following that. It's just trying to react to the mess that you've been.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about the matrix of the medical and cancer in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so devastating to so many people. And
Hmm.
now that I have freed myself from that system, like, I am not dependent on that system in any way, shape, or form. I have no interaction with that system. It's
Yeah.
so freeing that I can
Yeah.
just be myself, and I can rebalance my own body, and I don't need other
Hmm.
people to do it. And I can ask other people for support and assistance, but
Hmm.
it's like I'm asking for what I need, and
Right.
I'm asking people who can actually fulfill those needs, rather than
Hmm.
going in and, finding out what's wrong with me, please fix me. Completely
Right.
different thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Wow. Oh, Marlo, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today. It's such a joy and a pleasure to connect with you. It's
Mm.
been so beautiful seeing the mountains and the blue sky in the background with you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I wanted to be outside, share a little Puerto Vita with everyone.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank
Hmm.
you. So we wish you so much success and love and
Thank you.
adventure on your journey. And
Mm.
is there any way would you like for people to reach out to you for any?
Um, yeah, I guess I'm open to if people have questions. I can my email's probably the best way to do that. And it's just my name, Marlo at marlonikkila.com. And yeah, I'm just open to share anything more they want me to expand on or ask questions about living here, about, anything we talked about. I'm happy to engage.
Beautiful. So as you're watching this or listening to this today, and you'd like to reach out to Marlo, just check the show notes. Her email will be there. So please don't hesitate. And Marlo is just an amazing individual, as you have already found
Mm.
out today. And I
Thank you,
absolutely
Lisa.
love connecting with her. And I'm so honored that you said yes to sharing your stories with us
Mm.
today.
Yeah, thank you for allowing the space for me to do that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So, everyone, thank you so much for watching another episode of Awake, Aware, Alive. Please feel free to tune in again next week as we have another fantastic guest. And if this has been helpful to you, please subscribe to my channel. Please feel free to share this with anyone you feel would benefit from this conversation. So, Marlo, thank you, thank you, thank
Mm.
you. We wish you all the best. Have a beautiful holiday season as we are coming up at the end of 2024 and stepping into 2025. So, thank you so much, everyone. Until next time, create for yourselves an amazing week, because you can. Bye for now.